Hey, friends. Thank you for joining me at this special time on Sunday. I did mention yesterday during afternoon or during weekend, Jen, that I was thinking of adding a Sunday show, but I did not think it would be because of this situation. I am so sorry to be here right now when we are having to talk about one of the saddest things that you can begin to even discuss, which is the tragedy of war, coupled with how war brings and atrocities bring and terrorism bring the loss of children, the grieving of parents. And you know that I am specifically here speaking about what happened last night, that we learned last night in Israel and in Gaza, that 6 hostages were one of the approximately 250 who were taken by the terrorist organization Hamas and dragged into Gaza, that 6 of them who are on the verge of being rescued by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, were killed, were shot, and were murdered and left in tunnels. And their bodies were discovered, and their parents were notified. And among those found was Hersh Goldberg-Polin, excuse me. And you probably remember his name, Hersh's name, because his mother, Rachel, and his father, John, spoke at the DNC. And we played a bit of that clip. Now, I want to be absolutely clear that the reason why I'm having this conversation with you now on this very hard day is because I cherish all life and everyone's lives, and I am torn up about October 7th. There was no excuse. The terrorist group Hamas has no justification for going in on a rampage and murdering hundreds of young people attending a peaceful, fun music rave in the desert, or taking this tactic and acting as if doing this taking hostages and murdering and raping, and there is evidence of that, people, that would bring sympathy to the cause of the Palestinian people, which is a very good cause. And our nation and our communities have been torn up about this because there is now, sadly, so much of an emphasis on justification for violence as opposed to finding a way forward with peace. And to be clear, I agree with the International Criminal Court that the Hamas leaders, including Sinwar, is a war criminal. And I also believe that the Israeli leadership, specifically Benjamin Netanyahu and his top team, are also war criminals. And this has been adjudicated. But where does this, by the International Criminal Court? But that aside, where does that leave us? I want to be really crystal clear that right now, I want to talk first and foremost about those 6 people who lost their lives on the verge of being rescued. Now, let's look at them. These are beautiful young people. Alexander Lubnov. We also have Almag. We have Almag Sarusi, Carmel Gat, Eden Yerushalami, Hersh Goldberg-Polin, who we've spoken about, and Ori Danino. This is who we are mourning and grieving right now. And the funerals will begin tomorrow. And I want to be clear too, just focus on one of the young people who has become the face of the hostage effort, because among these people who I was discussing, among these beautiful young people who were found dead in a tunnel just minutes, if not moments, before they were going to be rescued, was an American. All lives are important throughout the globe, but I want to point out to you that Hersh Goldberg-Polin is dead, and he is an American, and his American parents were at the DNC last week. They have not spoken up yet, of course, but they have issued this statement that I would like to read to you. With broken hearts, the Goldberg-Polin family is devastated to announce the death of their beloved son and brother, Hersh. The family thanks you all for your love and support and asks for privacy at this time. Now, what's happening right now in Israel, to be clear, is that the streets are flooded in Tel Aviv. I have a friend who is there, and she says there's about 750,000 people. That's 750,000 for those of you who don't love math. And this may not seem like a huge number by US terms because we have over, 350 or 380 million people here. But Israel has a population of 10 million people. So that is the equivalent of the equivalent of 25 million people in the streets of the capital. This is huge. And I want to share with you what that looks like and why the protests are happening. The protests right now are happening. You can see this picture. The protests are happening in Tel Aviv to protest Benjamin Netanyahu. You may have not been following this closely, but for months and months, the families of hostages as well as the citizens of Israel, which include not just Jewish citizens, but also Palestinian, Muslim citizens, Palestinian Christian citizens, citizens of a variety of different ethnicities and religions, have all called for a ceasefire. And it is Benjamin Netanyahu who is standing in the way, period, because maintaining this war keeps him in power. And as you may also know, he has been indicted previously for fraud. He's utterly corrupt and he is hated and he does not want to leave power. So this is one scene posted a huge protest in Tel Aviv. I'm also sharing this article. I think this is an AP article about how the deaths of the hostages has sparked protests and anger against Netanyahu in Israel. And there is a general strike that has been called on. And this includes over 800,000 workers. And remember, health workers, keep in mind again, that's a number that would be as if close to 20 million people struck in the US and refused to go to work. Also, the hatred against Benjamin Netanyahu is so strong that you can see right here, this is a picture of the motorcade, and someone painted on this, and I don't know Hebrew well enough. I can see the first words you read from right to left say Bibi, and the second word says murderer. This is how strongly people are willing to risk their safety to paint something like this on his motorcade. And I want to also add for you to get a sense of this. This is a screenshot from the law professor, Fania Salzberger, and she happens to also be the daughter of Amos Oz, who has always been a peace activist and Zionist in Israel. And here's what she said today, this afternoon here and this evening in Israel. It was an execution. When the details are published, the nation will cry. 6 hostages were held together and murdered together in a horrific way. The blood of the abductees will forever be on the hands of the Israeli government. She is quoting this person below who wrote that in Hebrew. And then she added, of course, and it goes without saying, on the hands of Hamas. But most Israelis now understand the terrible truth about our own ruler and his priorities. Okay, so I just want to let you know what the feeling is right now in Israel. And I'm going to pull that. Sorry, I want to show you. That was just, I think I was just showing you images. Now I am going to show you the video here of the protests in Tel Aviv. Sorry. So these huge protests, what people are shouting for is ceasefire, shouting for peace. This is what they want. And this is when, before I go into a little more detail, and I share with you a little more, and this is obviously what this show today is about a mother's grief, in particular Rachel Goldberg, the mother of Hersh Goldberg-Polin. And of course, that is the focus. But as I said at the outset, A mother's grief, or I should have said, I think I said this on Twitter, introducing the show, a mother's grief knows no national boundaries. A mother's grief exists. We should care for all of the children, as should fathers. I'm just pointing out, in this case, how much I feel sympathy and empathy for Rachel. But I want to also, and I also want to share with you a video of a young boy crying and begging his mother, please stop crying, because she just learned about the death of another son. And this woman happens to be Palestinian. And her son died in an Israeli airstrike. I can barely make it through that video. That young boy, that trauma. This is happening across Israel and Gaza. Okay, and I'm going to return to Rachel and John and their son, Hersh, and the plea to end this war. And we in America need to put more pressure on Netanyahu, so that he is pressured, just like the people in Israel want, to either step down or end the war, or both. He is standing in the way of the hostages being returned. These rescue missions that he sends out that sometimes succeed and sometimes end in the deaths of the hostages is not the way to move forward. And I think I just spoke to you about the protests and I showed you those pictures. I want to give you some numbers here. And what I am showing you here are, this is an Associated Press story. Just to focus on numbers. Numbers aren't people. All these lives, everyone who has suffered has a name, has a family. So just so you know, though, just to talk about this, Hamas took around 250 people hostage on October 7th. And at this point, around 100 still remain in captivity. And of those 100, some of them are just the remains that should be returned to their family. Now, there was a week-long ceasefire last November, and there was an exchange of Palestinian prisoners for hostages. This would be the way to move forward. But as you know, Netanyahu recently had killed the person who is part of the negotiating team when he was in Iran. That set things back, because Netanyahu prioritizes keeping the war going more than he prioritizes the hostages or their families. They've also, as this article says, at 2 previous operations to free hostages, killed scores of Palestinians. So the Hamas-led militants have killed around 1,200 people. That is since October 7th, or that is during October 7th, and those are mostly civilians. These are horrendous, inexcusable war crimes. This is when Hamas stormed into southern Israel, and including parachuting in, and they attacked army bases as well as small farming communities in the south, and of course, hundreds of young people at the Nova Festival. Now, Israel has retaliated, and this has gone on far too long. We don't fully know all of the numbers, but the estimate is around 40,000 Palestinians without a clear designation as to who were fighters and who were families. And in the meanwhile, we have more than 2 million families who are displaced out of their homes, and a huge portion of them are suffering from water is unavailable that is safe to drink. Food is not plentiful. And I could continue. Now, I know that there obviously, in a situation like this, it's really easy to say, well, your government started. It's easy to say, and I don't subscribe to this. Well, your government shouldn't have started this war. But we've had a government here that we did not like. Donald Trump has done atrocious things. We've had other presidents who have done terrible things, but we certainly don't take the position that justifies the murder, the butchering, and the taking hostage of civilians. So that is true. And at the same time, right, because these people are angry with the way the Israeli government treated them. And at the same time, all of the innocent people who have been suffering under the leadership of Hamas in Gaza don't deserve the treatment they're facing. And I know people say, well, they voted them in. Well, when that happened, there hasn't been an election, I think, since 2005. A huge portion of those people are children. And even if you vote someone in, if there haven't been elections, they don't necessarily represent you. I don't even know why I need to make this case for why starvation and ongoing war is bad and should be stopped. There is no, so that is the fact. I think the idea was somehow Hamas would be displaced just through bombs and through raids, and that is not going to happen. Obviously, Hamas should not be in power. The way this needs to be done, though, is through the negotiation that the Biden administration has wanted in its 3 parts, and it's simple in terms of concepts. May be hard, though, to obviously get people to the table again. It involves a ceasefire, first of all, then a return of hostages' remains as well as living hostages. And then the third part involves rebuilding Gaza, involves displacing Hamas and having real elections and having someone represent, I'm adding this. Let me not add this to the Biden plan. The third part of the Biden plan is coming up with a kind of Marshall Plan to rebuild Gaza and then work toward a Palestinian state where the Palestinian people can have statehood, the so-called 2-state solution. Of course, in order for that to happen, we would not be able to work with Hamas because even the political arm has the belief that Israel does not have the right to exist and that the Jews should be killed. So that's not going to work. However, I do believe that we can bring the hostages home and we can achieve a ceasefire and we can achieve Palestinian statehood. But this cannot happen, obviously, if Donald Trump is elected or if Bibi Netanyahu stays in power or if Sinwar stays in power, ultimately leading Hamas. Okay, now, what I would like to do now is share with you from the voice of Hersh Goldberg-Polin, just from a couple of weeks ago at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, before Hersh was murdered and what she was pleading for. And I think I would like to listen to her and for you to listen to her and for us to reach out to our representatives in Congress and even to the president to demand a ceasefire, to demand a return of the hostages. Let's listen to Rachel.
At this moment, 109 treasured human beings are being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. They are Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. They are from 23 different countries. The youngest hostage is a 1-year-old red-headed baby boy, and the oldest is an 86-year-old mustachioed grandpa. Among the hostages are 8 American citizens. One of those Americans is our only son. His name is Hersh. He's 23 years old. And like Vice President Kamala Harris, Hersh was born in Oakland, California. Hersh is a happy-go-lucky, laid-back, good-humored, respectful, and curious person. He is a civilian. He loves soccer, is wild about music and music festivals, and he has been obsessed with geography and travel since he was a little boy. His bedroom overflows with atlases, globes, maps, and National Geographic magazines. On October 7th, Hersh and his best friend, Honor, went to a music festival in the south of Israel. It was advertised as celebrating peace, love, and unity. They also went to celebrate Hersh's 23rd birthday. As rockets began to fall, Hersh, Honor, and 27 other young festival goers took refuge in a 5-foot by 8-foot bomb shelter. Terrorists began to throw grenades into the shelter. Honor stood in the doorway and repelled 7 of those grenades before the 8th one killed him. Altogether at the Nova Music Festival, 367 young music lovers were killed. This was just one of the many attacks on neighborhoods and communities in southern Israel on that terrible day. In total, 1,200 were killed, including 45 Americans. Hersh's left forearm, his dominant arm, was blown off before he was loaded onto a pickup truck and stolen from his life and me and John into Gaza. And that was 320 days ago.
Now 330.
Since then, we live on another planet. Anyone who is a parent or has had a parent can try to imagine the anguish and misery that John and I and all the hostage families are enduring.
Rachel and I are comforted to be back in our sweet home, Chicago. We were both born and raised here, and our families still live here. This is a political convention, but needing our only son and all of the cherished hostages home is not a political issue.
That's right.
It is a humanitarian issue. The families of the American 8 hostages meet every few weeks in Washington. We're heartened that both Democratic and Republican leaders demonstrate their bipartisan support for our hostages being released. We've met with President Biden and Vice President Harris numerous times at the White House. They're both working tirelessly for a hostage and ceasefire deal that will bring our precious children, mothers, fathers, spouses, grandparents, and grandchildren home, and will stop the despair in Gaza. We are all deeply grateful to them. We're also profoundly thankful to you, the millions of people in the United States and all over the world who have been sending love, support, and strength to the hostage families. You've kept us breathing in a world without air. There is a surplus of agony on all sides of the tragic conflict in the Middle East. In a competition of pain, there are no winners.
Absolutely. Let's repeat that. In a competition of pain, there are no winners.
In our Jewish tradition, we say, Kol Adam Olam Umlo'o. Every person is an entire universe. We must save all these universes.
That's right.
In an inflamed Middle East, we know the one thing that can most immediately release pressure and bring calm to the entire region. A deal that brings this diverse group of 109 hostages home and ends the suffering of the innocent civilians in Gaza.
So it's hard to watch, it's hard to breathe listening to that a little over 10 days later, because I know we wanted this to end differently. We all want Hersh to come home. We all want this war to stop. We all wish those 1,200 Israelis were never murdered and the 40,000 people, Palestinians in Gaza, also were not killed in this war. And yet here we are. And I wanted to give all of that time to Rachel and Jonathan because they are right. The competition of pain, in a competition of pain, there are no winners. And I guess the only thing that would buoy me in this time, that would lift my spirits, is that we are here together grieving for all mothers, for all parents, for all families, for all members of the world community, because we have not evolved enough to figure out how to live with joy and not war, how to find peace, and how to find ways that all of us can have dignified lives and safety within our homes, within our bigger families, within our communities. I wish that were the world we are in, and we are not. Now, I want to show you one last picture before we go. I know we talked about Hersh, but I want to show you this, if you can see. This is a photo that someone shared early this morning, and it's a picture of Hersh Goldberg-Polin's bedroom. And if you see on his desk where his books are stacked up is a large poster, and it says, I don't know if I can get this out, Jerusalem is everyone's. So I will say that to all of us, because whether Jerusalem represents for you as one of the Abrahamic religions, whether you're Jewish or Muslim or Christian, or whether you are no religion at all and it is a deeply historical site, it belongs to everyone. So thank you for sharing this time with me. I will be back tomorrow morning with a regular episode of Morning Jen, or what I'm beginning just to call Jen Taub Live, because I'm showing up on weekends as well. And I'll see you at 8 a.m. And it will be all the legal and political news and snark that you are looking for over coffee. And I promise we will have some crazy town tomorrow. I didn't think it would be respectful at this moment to do that. So thank you for joining me. And may Hersh and may everyone whose lives were lost since October 7th in Israel and Gaza, may their memories be for a blessing. Thank you all.